know how he knew who had brought me there, but Atul came to me and he walked into the second office where he had walked when we first arrived. And he told me that I would soon be ushered in. I was ushered into the office. I found a man, an Indian-looking man, sitting on the other side of an office that is not so big, on a desk that's not very glamorous, and on the other side there was a chair. I greeted and I took the chair that was opposite him. He did not rise as I entered to greet me as courtesy would, at least in my standards, a courtesy would demand. He confirmed that he was the elder brother to the two people that picked me up from the airport. We were having exchange of pleasantries, like when people meet, and he asked me, it was difficult for us to actually strike a conversation, but he eventually began to ask me about my family. He asked me about my daughter. I told him that my daughter was studying at UCT. He asked me about, I told him that, asked me about my family. And I told him about my children, one at UCT, and my son, at whom he took an interest. I did not tell him that I have another daughter, my adoptive daughter, that I adopted from my sister, or that I share with a sister of mine. He took particular interest on my son. He asked me where he schooled. He asked me what sport, if he played any sport. I told him that he played cricket and that he belonged to the Western Province Junior Cricket Club. He said that he could offer a bat for my son. I told him that I had just purchased my son an English willow cricket bat, so it was not necessary for a new bat. And then he said that when he outgrows his bat, I should let him know so that he could offer the bat. He also told me that they have suites at the Newlands Cricket Stadium. And he said that if I wanted to, I could gain access to their suites when there is a cricket match playing there.
Can I just seek clarity from you? You say he mentioned they had suites at the, is it suite or suite? At the cricket field?
A suite.
One, okay. Now you say they. They who? Did you have an understanding of who owns the suite?
Before I answer your question, through your permission and the permission of the chair, may I kindly go back slightly?
By all means, I'm sure the chair will permit you.
Yes, you may.
Thank you. During our conversation, after he asked me about my family, I had also asked him about his family. I asked him when they came to South Africa. He said they came around 94, the early 90s, just before, in fact not 94, before 94, just before 94. He told me that the gentleman I came to know as Atul was his younger brother whom he had sent to the US to go and study. And that when he came from the US, he went back to their Saharanpur village or whatever it is in India. So they made a bit of money, about R1 million, if my memory serves me well. And then they decided to come here just before 1994. So when he said we, he also spoke about we, the Gupta family, we came here, we established businesses like Sahara, etc. So when he said we have a suite at the Western Province Cricket Stadium, it was them as the Gupta family that had come into the country to establish business interests in the country.
Understood. Thank you for the clarification, ma'am. You may continue.
I told him that I don't really watch cricket, that the only time that I watch cricket is when I'm overseas, when I miss my son. He told me that the offer still stands. I rejected the offer. And if I may take you back, the gentleman that brought me from the airport did know that I was going to have a meeting with the president. That was not odd for me because they are picking me up. They know where they're taking me to. But he too knew that I was going to meet the president.
And how, on what basis do you conclude that he too knew?
Because he told me that he knows that I'm coming to see the president, and he told me that the president is delayed as he is busy consulting with COSATU at Lutulu House, as at that time there was a strike going on that was a COSATU strike.
Okay.
I began to protest again that I was running late. And again, if I may take you back through the permission of the chairperson, whilst I was seated down that window on that shabby chair and coffee table, I had called my friend to tell her that I'm actually around in Gauteng province in Johannesburg and that I was en route to go and see the president. She had known, obviously, of my previous endeavors to try and meet the president. So I was astounded when he knew that I'm meeting the president, and when he knew that the president was held up at Lutuli House. And he was saying that to allay my agitation that I am getting delayed. As I insisted to go, when we parted ways, he told me that we would meet again. At that time, that didn't mean anything to me, because when human beings part ways, they sometimes just casually say, we will meet again. So it didn't ring any bells to me. The other thing that struck me is that not only did he know that I was meeting the president, he also knew about the agenda.
Please expound on that. What do you mean he knew about the agenda?
Yes, that unsettled me a little bit. But when I insisted, then the guys called, and then we parted ways. He says we will meet again, and then we get back into this vehicle that we had left parked on the parking lot, and we drive away.
Before we drive away, can I just get clarity on this? You state that the gentleman knew your agenda with the president. On what basis do you say that? Why do you say he knew the agenda?
Because he told me.
Do you recall what in particular he said to you in that regard?
I particularly also recall that that's why I went to driving away, that when we arrived in a certain house, he unbundled the agenda and he talked to it.
Okay, so this is not at Sahara where he gives you the detail of the agenda, it's at a later...
Yes, the detail of the agenda is at Saxonwold.
Okay. Now, secondly, if you could just clarify this for me and the chair, when you met this gentleman, did he introduce himself by name to you?
Ma'am,
Don't you recall?
advocate, it's either my memory was deliberately dropping their Indian names because they are difficult. But I recall that he said that they are a Gupta family. He's a Gupta elder brother. He's a Gupta elder brother to the two gentlemen that fetched me from the airport. That meant that those two gentlemen that fetched me from the airport were Gupta brothers.
Okay. I think the chair wants to pose a question.
Just before this last question, the evidence you were giving, was it relating to when you were still at Sahara, or had you moved to the, or there is Saxonwold and there is Sahara? Okay, you started at Sahara, is that correct?
Yes, Chair.
Yes. So this evidence that you were giving where you were saying that you were effectively getting restless, feeling that your time was being wasted, were you at Sahara or were you at Saxonwold?
At first, I got restless at Sahara.
But when you were giving evidence just before this question, you were talking about when you were at Sahara?
Yes, Chairperson.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for the clarification. In your statement, you describe the person you call the elder brother of the two. Can you share the description you provide to the chair?
Once I knew from him that he was the elder brother of the two that fetched me from the airport, I took note of their physique and physical build. I actually determined that they almost look similar if you don't look very close, if you look from afar and fast, but that in terms of physique, the other one, the one that purports to be the elder brother, is a little bit stoutish than the one that I later came to know as Atul, the one that he said he sent to the US to go and study. But I also realized that of the three brothers, because then I know that there are three brothers now, the one that was taller, a little bit tall, and more slender than the two was Rajesh. I later came to firmly know that person as Rajesh. I also, in the conversation while still at Sahara, when he asked me about my family and I asked him about his family, I found it odd that I noticed that he was wearing a gold ring with a red ruby. And the gold didn't look like 9-carat gold because it looked either like 18 or 24. It was very bright gold. He was wearing it on the index finger, which was odd for me. So I asked him why he was wearing a ring in the finger that he was wearing the ring on. He said that they are Hindu, the Gupta family, and that his father, in Hindu culture, the father is patriarch of the family, and that the father had passed on, and when in their culture, Hindu culture, when a patriarch passes on, the eldest brother takes the role of being the patriarch of the family, and that ring used to belong to his father. So when the father died, that ring was put on his finger as the new patriarch for the family. And that ring also stood in my mind as a distinguishing feature between the two brothers that I came to know, SIJ and Atu. RJ being the elder one that's wearing that ring. After my agitation and after realizing that he knows my meeting with the president and hinting that he knows the agenda as well, I'm taken away. And he says we will meet again. He says to me, I'm being transported to a place where I will, in my mind, I concluded that he's saying, I'm going to a holding place.
Before you go past that point, you say he told you are going to a holding place. Who's the he you are referring to in this case?
Ajay,
Okay.
that the two brothers that had brought me there would take me to a place where I would wait for the president. We left Sahara.
I'm sorry, Ms. Mentor. Don't forget where I interrupted you. Earlier on, you were asked how you knew that Mr. Ajay Gupta knew the agenda for the meeting between yourself and the president. And you said it's because he unpacked. And I don't know if you finished that sentence. Can you just tell us exactly what he said that made you believe that he knew the agenda for your meeting with the president?
I recall that he hinted that he knew the agenda, but the unpacking of the agenda was not in Sahara. It was at Saxonwold.
Okay, it's fine. Whether it was Saxonwold, whatever he said that made you believe that he knew the agenda for your meeting with the president, can you just tell us this is what he said?
Chair, with your permission, it is in this statement and it happens at Saxonwold. Would the chair want a response to that question now, or does she
Yes,
go to
now.
Saxonwold now?
Now, yeah.
Please respond to the question, Ms. Mentor.
When he later came to meet me in Saxonwold, he referred to me coming from the Northern Cape, and the Northern Cape being rich in uranium. He referred to the nuclear build program that government was going to embark on. And he said that they were going to be the main supplier of uranium for that nuclear build. And he, in that process, said that the PBMR had to be closed. The issue that I was coming to see the president on, which was the PBMR, is going to be history because it's not going to play any role in the nuclear build that he attested to was forthcoming. So he mentioned issues that the PBMR was burning money. Later on, he also said the SAA was burning money too. So that showed me that he knew that I was coming to see the president on the PBMR, because he said actually to me, forget about saving the PBMR, not so directly, but to say that the PBR does not have any role in the nuclear build, and that like the SA, it was a money burner.
So in other words, he didn't say, I know what you are going to be discussing with the president, but he discussed issues which happened to be the same issues that you were planning to discuss with the president.
He inferred, and I deducted, that he knows the agenda.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's clarified. Thank you, Chair. Ms. Mentor, you were now at the point where you were leaving Sahara. And you stated that you were advised that you were being taken to a holding place or holding area, I think you said. Can you take the conversation from there?
I did not imagine that the holding place would be a private residence. And I must say that I don't drive much when I'm in the Gauteng province. But I do have bearings here and there. The only route I drove a lot in Johannesburg. I never drive in between the cities or the residential areas. I normally just drive from the airport to Pretoria on a rented car and back. That's the safest. So I did not initially pick up that we are not going to Pretoria, but I knew I was going to a holding area. Up until we stopped outside a gate in a residential looking area where there were 2 securities.
And did you know the place you had stopped at?
No, and I only knew when I asked once I was inside the house.
You deal with this aspect at your paragraph 78. And with reference thereto, you attach 2 annexures as MPM2, Chair, which starts, my error, it's more than 2, it's actually 5, starts at page 37 bracket C to 37 bracket G. Now, in your statement, you say these are pictures of the house you were taken to in Saxonwold. Is that correct?
That gate,
Please try and speak into the mic.
sorry.
Thank you.
The gate in 37C and 37D,
Yes.
37E, 37F,
Yes.
look like the gate we went through.
Okay. Now, once again, if you could just explain to the chair, what is the source of these pictures, and do you know when they were taken?
I don't know when they were taken. I don't know who took them. I suppose they are from the media. I did not take pictures on the day.
Where did you source these particular pictures from?
It's only from the media that they can be sourced.
So you're saying these are publicly available pictures?
Yes.
How long after you had been to Sahara and Saxonwold did you see these pictures?
Thank you, Chair. I only saw these pictures when I was consulting with my attorneys recently, when they asked me if I recognize these pictures, and that's probably last month, if I'm not wrong.
And you had been to Saxonwold and Sahara in 2010?
2010.
2010. So that was about
8 years.
over 7 years or 8 years later. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Now, when you arrive at this gate that appears at MPM 2 on the pages 37C to 37F, did you recognize the place?
Nope.
Did you inquire for those who drove you to the place what that place was?
Not at the gate.
Did you inquire from them the purpose of going to that address?
I did not at the gate.
You then, may I inquire why not?
Because I was going to a holding place, a nondescript holding place, but that I did not expect to be a residential area or a house.
At the time, what did you understand the holding place to be, and how does that fit into your scheduled appointment with the president?
The president, the state, let me put it this way. The state does have residential places. There is Mahlambandovu, there is, so I think what lulled me not to ask any question is the knowledge that the state has residential properties.
Now, were you aware at this point that you are in Johannesburg and not Pretoria, or you are not familiar with both of them to have made that deduction?
I'm familiar with the union building, so I did know that it's not the union building.
But as far as towns are concerned, were you of the view that you are in Pretoria, or did you understand and appreciate that you are still in Johannesburg?
I did not appreciate, but I may have thought that I'm somewhere between Pretoria and Johannesburg.
Okay. From 79, you then deal with your arrival at this residence in Saxonwold. Can you take the chair through what transpired there from the moment you arrive?
Is this inside the house or outside the house?
So as you arrive at the gate, what then happens next?
They have a brief chat with the two security people, and then we make an entrance. I'm not made to sign anything. We go in, we go on a driveway. I noticed that there are a few houses, not too many though, and we stop at the biggest of the houses, which looked quite gigantic and was like a mansion. And I'm assisted out of the vehicle because I'm on crutches, and again, somebody holds my handbag, somebody gives me my crutch, helps me out of the vehicle, gives me my crutches. I go over a few stairs. I think, if my memory serves me well, there were marble stairs. My daughter and I always have a fight over what is granite and what is marble. I never know the distinction, but in my head they were marble.
Can you recall the color?
I think they were grayish or cream white, that's grayish.
Okay.
They were about 5, or let me say they were between 4 and 6. And they led into an entrance and into what in a normal house you can call a lounge area, or you can call, in big houses and mansions, you can call that a reception area. In there were 2 couches. They were perpendicularly arranged to one another at a 90-degree angle with a coffee table between them in a manner that would put it between the 2. The house looked like it was work in progress, because for me, for that size of a lounge / reception, it was too sparsely furnished because it had only 2 couches and a coffee table. It had a giant pillar I took one of the couches, and to my slight adjacent right, there was a giant pillar. It was not neatly covered, like, it looked like it was still to be, it lacked aesthetics, it lacked beauty. It was not properly covered. Behind it, there was a very gigantic window. I appreciated it because it was massive and it brought in a lot of light. There was artwork on the murals, and I remember looking at it and wondering, because of the sparseness of the area, and also because of the beauty of the artwork, trying to figure out if that was wallpaper or if that was actual painting by an artist.
Now, can I just take you back to the staircase? I don't think it was clear to the chairperson. This staircase you refer to, where exactly is it located? Is it outside or inside the house? And could you indicate what does it lead to, the staircase you went up?
They're outside the house.
Okay.
They lead into the area where I was ushered in, where I find the two couches sitting perpendicular to one another.
Thank you for that clarification. You are then now seated on one of the couches in this room that you describe. What happens next?
The man that I know as Rajesh then disappears somewhere into the house, and Atul stays with me. He tells me now, whilst we are in the house, that the president will come in. Before the president, he tells me that the brother that we met at Sahara would come and meet me there. That was a bit odd for me. Now I figured out what he meant when, only then, when he said, we'll meet again. Because it was odd that we met at Sahara. We have no business together. And yet, I thought I was coming to a holding place for the president. He also now tells me that the president will also come there for a meeting. And he says to me, he asks me what they could offer me to eat and drink. And he tells me that he will go and fetch, that they have a chef, and that he will go and fetch a chef who would, through whom I could ask what to eat and drink. If I'm seated this way, the pillar is to my right and the window, he goes in that direction, and that's the direction of the kitchen. And he comes back with a young Indian man who is wearing a white vest, who is barefooted. And this young man was almost bowing to kneel before me, and I asked him to please let not the young man bow or kneel before me. I took exception to that, because for me, nobody should, I don't mean to be rude to other people's cultures, but to me, a person should not kneel before me. So he instructed him to rise as I requested, and then he could not speak English.
He being?
The young man that he brought, that he said was the chef.
Okay.
And then so we speak through him, myself and the chef. The chef tells him what is to offer. There were three options. I think I chose mutton curry. Of, the food seems to have been, it was around lunchtime. The food seems to have been ready because it didn't take long after I made my choice to be given what I had chosen. I was also asked what I would drink. I was given, I was told there is Chinese tea, there is Indian tea, there is what. I chose chai tea. So the food came. Before the food came, I had been ushered and showed the bathrooms, or the restrooms. They also were to my right, a passage to my right leading further into the house. He said to me, he's going to show me the ladies' restrooms.
Just so we don't get confused, by the he, you mean?
Atul.
Thank you.
He showed me the restrooms. They were quite beautiful. I remember the gold detail, and I remember wondering whether it is real gold or whether it's gold gilded. They were quite beautiful. I remember the mirror particularly, and I think, I'm not an expert in art, but I think they moved more towards French, whether real French art or not, but they were really beautiful. I know that all the mirrors that I love are French. So I remember that mirror because I really admired it. It was beautiful. After he showed me, I saw the expensive hand lotions and stuff. After he showed me that, he said to me, now let me go and show you the other bathrooms on the other side. And I said, if these are the ladies' bathrooms, I don't need to see the other bathrooms, presuming that they would be male and that I would not need to use them. So I didn't go, so I ended up sitting back on the couch where I was seated with my handbag on I think I was seated on a two-seater or a three-seater, I cannot remember. If my memory serves me well, those couches were kind of, what do you call, nude or pinkish or, excuse me. Then the food comes and I pick on it because I don't like it. I must say that I'm familiar to curry. In the Western Cape and in the Northern Cape and myself, when I cook curry, I do a Malay flair of the curry. So that was Indian curry, and I don't like, there are people that love Indian curry. I didn't like it. Just picked on it out of courtesy. I tried the chai tea. I didn't like it either. And I ended up not really eating. And then after,
If I may just interject, at this time that you are trying out your food and tea, are you with Mr. Atul Gupta still, or who are you with?
Mr. Atul had left. After he showed me the bathrooms, after he told me now, remember he tells me now that the president is coming there. After the chef introduction and all, he leaves me and I stay alone. I don't know if I did say that when I was at Sahara, I had called my friend. Yes.
Yes, you did indicate.
So I make another call to my friend, to the same friend, in this house when I'm sitting alone now. I tell her that I am somewhere in a house here. I have not yet seen the president. And I'm beginning to get concerned now. So I said to her, I don't know what time I will see the president, if ever, and I don't know if I'll still make it for my flight. If I miss my flight, could I please come and put up at your place tonight? And she says to me, no problem.
Did you inform her as to where exactly you were?
Roughly, because I could not describe where I was. But I said I'm in a house. I don't know if I told her specifically that I'm in a Gupta house. But I don't recall if I did.
Did you at the time know that it was a Gupta house?
I asked where I was, and I was told that I'm at Saxonwold,
And you were told by who?
Atul.
Yes, but in relation to this particular property, did anybody tell you who owns that property?
Only later.
When is later? Can you give the chairperson a sense?
After AJ came, I mean, I could deduct that they own the property because they have a chef, and the chef is theirs. And they have the detail of the bathroom that they are showing me. I could deduct.
Okay. All right, you may continue. You are now having your lunch and your tea.
I had it,
Okay.
and the
What
coffee
transpires next?
and the coffee table is cleared. And I called my friend, and Ajay comes in from the direction of the corridor that I was led to when I was showed the ladies.
Okay, so to get our bearings, you were led down a corridor where you were shown the bathrooms.
Yes,
And is it your testimony that Mr. Ajay Gupta came into the room where you were sitting from that corridor?
from that corridor.
Okay, understood.
And he says, we meet again. And that's when I already said, when the chairperson asked me a question, that when he came, he then spoke about me coming from the Northern Cape, about uranium, and that I could be useful or helpful in assisting them with the uranium that they were to procure for the nuclear build. And he expatiates on my agenda of the PBMR with the president. That gives me a clear impression that he knows what my agenda with the president is. He talks about that project and that I must forget about it. And then he talks about SAA's turnaround strategy, that it was not working and it was not yielding results. And he says to me, SAA burns money. He had also said that PBMR burns money. And then he suggests that if I facilitated the abolition of the SA Johannesburg, SAA route and back, that SAA stops traveling that route.
Let's understand that route again. It's SAA route.
It's Johannesburg, Mumbai, Johannesburg.
Okay.
If I facilitate, if I agree to facilitate its abolishment, that SAA does not travel that route anymore, I could become a minister. And Chairperson, through you, earlier on, Chairperson asked me if there is anything I would like to correct
Yes,
Yes.
in the document.
in the statement.
May I please take you to 101 of my statement, page 101. I mean, clause 101.
Paragraph, yes. That's page 29, Chair.
Thank you.
I think I had made, let me see where I want to. I don't think that Minister Barbara Hogan was recalled within a week's time of that encounter in Saxonwold. So I would like to place that on record that I think my articulation of time was not right there. But anyway, he told me that
Before we leave that, currently it is approximately 1 week or so later. So you want to correct yourself. What time frame are you proposing we amend it to?
because I have since, every day I'm seized with these matters. I wake up at night and I think about them, I check records, I check the internet. When Barbara Hogan was recalled at the end of October,
Yes.
and I said to the president, pardon me for refusing to see you in China 2 weeks ago. So it doesn't make sense that it could be within 1 week that she was recalled, if I take the two together.
Okay.
So you would say it's about how long?
I would say,
you're not able
I
to
would
say.
say a few weeks, 2 to 3, approximately.
Approximately 3 weeks
Yes.
after your trip to Sahara and Saxonwold. Well, I know the trip wasn't intended to go there, but after you had been there.
Yes, it's definitely not 1 week, Chair.
Yes.
It's a few,
But
3
tell
weeks
us what
or
you,
so.
Tell us what you are comfortable with in terms of your estimate. Are you comfortable with saying it was about 3 weeks after you had been to Saxonwold and Sahara? Or what are you comfortable to, what estimate are you
I would say
comfortable
approximately 2 to 3 weeks.
with? Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. We shall effect that correction. You'd actually jumped ahead of yourself. I think it crossed your mind that you wanted to make that amendment.
Yes, I wanted to deal with it before I forget it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now we go back to where you were in the story. You are now, according to you, having this conversation with Mr. Ajay Gupta. Yes.
He says, if I agree that I would eventually facilitate that, I could become the Minister of Public Enterprises, not in a week's time, in the near future, in a few weeks' time. That startled me. And I said to him, how so? I must say also, much as I initially was getting astounded, shocked, I also wanted to hear where this was heading to. He said I could be minister. I said, how so? He said the president was going to reshuffle his cabinet in the recent future, and Minister Barbara Hogan was going to be reshuffled, and I could become the minister in her place when she's reshuffled if I agree that once I become the minister, I would abolish the SAA India, South Africa, India, South Africa route.
Now, before you go any further, can I inquire from you? You testified that Mr. Ajay Gupta raised a number of issues with you, including the uranium deposits in the Northern Cape, including the PBMR and how it should be ditched, what you testified to, and the airline issue or the route. Did you respond to him on any of those issues? And if so, what did you say?
As I said, initially I wanted to hear where is this going to. When he mentioned that I could become minister, it's then that I began to ask questions. On the pebble bed modular reactor, I did not agree with him.
Did you express it as much to him?
I think so.
Okay, from what you recall, what conversations did you have around these issues that he had raised?
I particularly remember what's standing out for me is the discussion of him having the capacity to make me a minister. And the capacity, he claimed, firstly, that he knew that the president would reshuffle. At that time, there was no inkling whatsoever in the media that I knew of that there was going to be a reshuffle. You know, South Africans, normally when there is going to be a reshuffle, there would be speculation. There was none of those at that time. And then I asked him, how would you do this? How would this happen, that I become the Minister of Public Enterprises? He said that they could. He didn't say I could. He said they could put word in for me with the president. And when I expressed shock, he said, we normally do.
When he speaks in the plural, they and we, did you understand who he was referring to?
I was understand that he mean the Gupta brothers or the Gupta family.
Okay. And what was your response to that?
I first said to him, you know, Mr. Gupta, there are goods. There is human cargo and there is goods. As I said, you know, there are strong bilateral relations between India and South Africa that comes a long way. And as a result, there is daily a number of people that travel between South Africa and India using SAA, including goods, cargo. Now, if an SAA has cargo, if SAA abolishes that route, what is going to happen to those people and those goods? Then he said that they are in partnership with an airline, Jet Airways, that would see to that the transportation of human beings and cargo continues.
Did he provide any particularities as regards the airline he referred to?
Beg you?
Did he provide any particularities about this airline that he was referring to?
No.
Name or anything? No.
I'm sorry, I thought you were saying something like jetways.
No, but she's asking, did he furnish any further particular details about the airline? Oh, I beg your pardon, Chairperson.
It would appear, Chair, that I'm the only one whose ears sort of went dead. Everybody seemed to have had Jet Airways, so. Yes, my question is answered, Ms. Mentor.
Let her confirm. Is it Jet Airways that he said they were in partnership with?
Yes, Chairperson.
Thank you.
Chair, I must place on record that I am not going to finish with this witness today. I require to at least half a day with her tomorrow. I'm advised that Mr. Pretorius will address you about a possible application to be considered in this final hour of the day. And if that meets with your approval, Chair, I would request that you excuse the witness for the day and from the stand, and then I will hand over to Mr. Pretorius.
Well, one, the witness has a hand. Before I say anything, let me hear what
I
she
apologize,
has
I
to say.
missed that hand.
Yes, Ms. Mentor.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to make a correction
Yes.
on 122 of my statement.
Okay.
I laid a charge of obstructing justice at the IP.
So, sorry, Ms. Mentor, please bring the file closer to you so that you speak into the record for transcription purposes.
At some point, I
That's
went to,
paragraph 22 of
No,
your
so
statement.
122
122,
yes, Chairperson.
page 34.
and
Yes,
page
Chair.
34, Chair.
Yes.
At some point, I went to lay a charge against Mr. Ntlemeza and Advocate Mtolo. I laid a charge of obstructing justice at the IPIT office in Belleville. I took pictures of myself outside the police station and posted them on my Facebook page. I would like to make corrections there, please.
Okay,
I complained about Mr. Ntlemeza and Mr. Pathan, is it Pathani? Who was the acting commissioner.
okay,
And I also complained about the lady that I then believed was second in command of the Hawks, who I referred to also in the public protector transcript. At that, when I spoke to the public protector, I had forgotten her name, but I've since recalled that she is Ms. Mnonopi or something like that. And I did say to the public protector, she's second in command of the Hawks. She is an African lady. I did not complain about Mr. Mtolo
okay.
at IPIT, and that reference to police station of me taking a picture outside the police station is also incorrect.
How is that sentence to read?
Okay, sorry. At some point, I went to lay charges against Mr. Ntlemeza and Mr. Pathan. Is it Patla or Patlan? Forgive me. Delete Advocate Mtolo
Yes, we
and
have.
add the lady that was in second in command of the Hawks.
Okay,
Did you lay a charge against 3 people or 2 people?
I complained about 3 people.
So it was Mr. Ntlemeza, Mr. Patlane, and the lady that you are talking about.
Yes, yes, Chairperson.
Okay, so after Mr. Ntlemeza, we put a comma, we delete and we say Mr. Patlane, and then we say, and who is the third one? Have you got the name?
I think it's Brigadier Mnonopi, something like that. She was a brigadier.
Do you,
But my statement to IPID can be sourced. It will clarify the people I laid charges against.
do you want to reflect and check where you need to check before we finally put the name here? So that when we put the name, you are sure that it's the name that
Yes,
you are talking about.
thank you, Chair. But I certainly want to remove Advocate Mtolo.
Okay.
From there.
We have removed Abram Tolo, and on my page 34, I've got, at some point I went to lay a charge against Mr. Ntlemeza, comma, and I've deleted and Mr. Patlane, and I've deleted Mtolo, and I've left a space for another person that I will put in once you tell us you are sure.
Yes,
Okay.
and I took my picture, not outside, but inside the IPIT offices and not police station. So that outside must be inside, and
Okay.
police station must be deleted and be replaced by IPIT offices.
Inside IPIT offices. So we delete outside of the police station and put in inside IPIT offices.
Yes, Chair. One last thing through you, Chair. Advocate Sillo, if you can assist me to the place in my statement where I refer to the cancellation of the request for me to cancel the SA I want to locate it in the statement.
Okay. You mean you want to locate it when you were having a discussion with Mr. Gupta? Okay. You deal with that, you start at at paragraph 89, page 26,
Paragraph?
89.
Yes.
And you also deal with it at paragraph 90. That's the places I could find.
I thank you.
And 91. So if you could consider from paragraphs 89 to 91, then you can advise the chair what it is you want to draw his attention to.
I wanted to add that I don't know how you do your numeric ordering, but I wanted to add that subsequent to me declining the offer, me rejecting the offer, Minister Barbara Hogan being reshuffled as Ajay had told me in Saxonwold, the minister that was appointed in that position was Minister Gigaba, and that under his watch, that same route was cancelled, and Jet Airways became active in the route as it had been suggested to me at Saxonwold.
Okay.
Okay, I think maybe because that's something substantive, maybe when you give your evidence in regard to that, you can just point out that there's something else that should have been here, which is not here, and you then tell us what you should have included. Excuse me. Was that all that you wanted to
That was
mention?
all. Thank you for indulging me, Chairperson.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Silo, you had said certain things to me.
Yes, Chair.
You had said that you were proposing to stop with this witness at this stage because there was another plan. Mr. Pretorius had mentioned another plan to me,
Yes, Chair.
but I see he has just whispered something to you, so I don't know whether that means he wants to stand up or whether he is asking you to tell me.
As far as I can understand his whispers, he's not abandoning the plan, Chair.
You want to talk to him a bit before?
No, I think we are clarified, Chair. The part of my reason for requesting that perhaps we stop at this juncture, because Mr. Pretorius would like to address you on the question of applications, is firstly, I will not be done with this witness today, and secondly, we received documentation this morning pertaining to some aspects of her statement she will deal with tomorrow, which she hasn't had an opportunity to consider with her legal representatives. So this time would give her the opportunity to do that. So I would request that I hand over to Mr. Pretorius to deal with the application, the issue of applications, Chair, with your leave.
Okay, well, at least the latter reason about statements that have arrived late, that does justify, because otherwise I wanted us to try and finish with the witness. But if what she must still testify about is affected by documents that she hasn't had a chance to see, that's fine.
Indeed, Chair, and we are indebted to you.
So, Ms. Mentor, you have heard what the request is. So we will excuse you for today, but would appreciate it if you come back tomorrow so that you can continue with your evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
You are excused, and then I'll hear from Mr. Pretorius.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Commission has received a number of applications. By your leave, Mr. Maleka will deal with these.
Thank you.
Chair, may I kindly ask you to go to Exhibit D3?
Yes.
You will recall that that's the third file of the set that was handed up to you this morning by my colleague, Ms. Sillo.
Yes.
Just to place in context what that file comprises, you have now heard the evidence of Mr. Matebula, which did not implicate any person, but gave you a clear picture of the total government spend on public procurement, which, as I recall, was to the order of 800 billion, half of which was characterized by intentional abuse. You have heard the evidence of Mr. Jonas, who has implicated a number of persons, and you are now in the course of hearing the evidence of Ms. Mentor,
Yes.
who too implicated a number of persons. We have done as best as we could by sending a number of notices to various parties who have been implicated. There will not be a debate before you about whether or not those persons have, as a matter of fact, received the relevant notices under Rule 3.3 of the rules of the Commission's proceedings. Pursuant to those notices, some of the implicated individuals have made applications, some formally in terms of Rule 3.4, others informally, and I would like to take you to a number of documents in Exhibit D3. You will see that the first page is an index of the various applications that have been made. The first is an application by Ms. Lakela Kaunda, which you will find from page 1 of D3. I ask you for now to note the terms of the notice of motion contained in paragraph 1 of page 1. All she seeks at this stage is a permission from you to confer upon her the privilege to cross-examine Ms. Mentor with reference to paragraphs 60 to 64 of her statement. Let me, in that regard, immediately draw your attention to page 9 of the same bundle. And at page 9, you will find paragraph 18. And let me read it out to you. It is paragraph 18 of the founding affidavit supporting Ms. Kaunda's application for the privilege to cross-examine. She says, I make this application to cross-examine Ms. Mentor, subject to the contingency that the legal team confirms in writing that it is conceded and generally accepted by Ms. Mentor that I have not spoken to her during 2010 as alleged. That was the conditional basis on which she has made the application, on the assumption that we would have talked to Ms. Mentor to solicit the concession described in that paragraph. It is now clear from the evidence given this afternoon by Ms. Mentor that the concession intimated therein has no factual or evidential basis, because in her evidence, Ms. Mentor confirms that the calls she references emanated from Ms. Kaunda, and therefore it will become important for Ms. Kaunda to persist with her application to the extent that she requires the privilege of cross-examining Ms. Mentor. Against that background, Chair, I ask you to return to page 1. What concerns us about that application is that it does not deal with.
Mr. Maleka, before you say what concerns you about the application, is Ms. Kaunda represented here? Is somebody appearing? Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we don't deal with the matter in the absence of.
Yes. I was going to indicate to you that Ms. Kaunda is presently represented. And I'm glad that you have anticipated what I was going to say to you. But now that we know she is represented, can I indicate to you that what concerns us about this application is that it does not deal with all of the requirements.
But hang on, Mr. Maleka, what do you want us to do with these applications today? You see, I don't know whether you are getting into their merits now or what are you doing?
Not at all. What I'm trying to...
What do you want us to do?
I'd like to identify the applications for you, ask those who are present representing the applicants to come on record to the extent that they have not before, and ultimately ask you for direction as to when these applications will be heard. I say so, Chair, in regards to some of the applications, and I'm not going to address the merits, but let me take you to some of them. For instance, if you go to page 46, you will see an application by Mr. Mtolo, or Advocate Mtolo.
Who might fall away now, isn't it?
Well, with respect not, Chair.
Oh, I thought
Because what Ms. Mentor has done,
or is he mentioned elsewhere other than in the paragraph?
Indeed.
Oh, okay.
indeed. And just to give you comfort, Chair, if you can go to Exhibit D1 and go to page 34 of Ms. Mentor's written statement. You will remember that she corrected paragraph 122.
Yes.
She stands by and still persists with her testimony in paragraphs 120 and 121,
Okay.
both of which seriously implicate Mr. Mtolo
Okay.
in a different context.
Yeah.
And it is the context of a suggestion that she should exclude from her draft statement reference to certain persons because their hands were tied. And that's a serious matter because it goes to the heart of state capture, particularly the capture of law enforcement agents. To that extent, Mr. Mtolo is very much alive in the picture of being implicated in the evidence of Ms. Mentor.
Yeah.
But going back to page 46, Chair, you will see that Mr. Mtolo intended to make application before you by the previous Friday. And Friday has come and gone, and his application has not been dealt with.
Yes.
So that we would ask you for direction as to when you need to deal with it.
Yeah.
The same is the case with the application of General Mnonopi, which you'll find on my file is the last tagged document, numbered 4. It too intimated the date of the 24th August 2018. And we know that that date has come and gone.
Yes.
So we would ask for your directions, Chair, as to when you would want to hear these applications. We think it important that this matter has now become urgent because if and to the extent that you afford these implicated individuals the opportunity to cross-examine, we would ask you to do so on some directions. I'm not going to mention those directions at the moment until we hear the applications themselves. But generally, Chair, we would urge you not only to afford these persons the mere privilege of cross-examination, but that they must understand that the privilege comes along with some responsibility. And the responsibility is to undertake to testify orally under oath, and that they too become subjected to cross-examination, to test their version to the extent that they want to test the version of the witnesses called by the commission. But more importantly, Chairman, the agency has become very pronounced and acute because we too want to prepare ourselves and, to the extent necessary, interrogate the versions of those implicated persons by undertaking further investigations. Finally, Chair, there have been some individuals who appeared before you on the 20th through counsel. The last of the debate we had with them is that they will consider their position and, if necessary, make applications of the same kind. We can no longer leave that issue to some Lazarus moment of the future. We would ask for your guidance in that regard because we think it important that that matter should be dealt with quite quickly. And to that extent, we would invite you to issue some directions in relation to when those persons must make their applications. They have placed on record that they will be ready to cross-examine witnesses who have testified thus far by the first week of September. Again, we would like to be prepared in order to deal with that cross-examination.
Yeah.
So, Chair, I would urge you to consider issuing directions about when both types of applications ought to be heard.
With regard to applications for leave to cross-examine, I expect that when such an application is made, the implicated person has already furnished the Commission's legal team with a statement in terms of the rules, in terms of which that implicated person specifies what parts of the witness's statement he or she disputes and puts up his or her own version. Now, in regard to these, now I expect that by the time the application for leave to cross-examine is lodged, that would have happened. But it may well be that these two happen at the same time. In other words, the application for leave to cross-examine contains the statement from the implicated person. I'm not sure, and I can't remember how the rules, what the rules require. So on these applications, has that been done?
Yes, Chair. The application, if you can go back to the index again.
Yeah.
The application of Ms. Kaunda is accompanied by a statement setting out the respects in which she disputes the version of Ms. Mentor and setting out her version.
Yeah.
We have some difficulty with regard to the relief sought in the notice of motion.
Yeah.
When that application is motivated, we would like to address you about the terms on which you may consider granting leave to cross-examine. Because there is nothing in the notice of motion that I have taken you to, and there is nothing in the accompanying affidavit which expressly commits Ms. Kaunda to giving testimony orally under oath before you so that her version can be tested too. To that extent, we would ask you to impose conditions to the extent that you grant her the permission and the privilege of cross-examination.
But remind me, do the rules go that far? Do the rules say that they must commit themselves to taking the witness stand? Or do they simply say they must put up their version?
No, it goes to the extent of indicating what they must do when they apply for leave to cross-examine.
Yes.
And can I take you to the rules, Chair? I hope that you have them before you.
Yes, I should have them. Yes, I've got them.
Chair, if you go to Rule 336, that person, that is the implicated person, if he or she wishes to give evidence, himself or herself, call any witness to give evidence in his or her behalf, or cross-examine a witness. Next on page 6, he or she must, in 2 weeks, from the date of the notice, apply in writing to the Commission to do so. And 3.3.7 gives you the discretion on how you will deal with that application. And then, Chair, if you go to 3.4, an application in terms of Rule 336 must be submitted in writing to the Secretary of the Commission within 14 days from the date of the notice referred to in 3.3. The application must be accompanied by a statement from the implicated person responding to the witness statement insofar as it implicates him or her. That statement must make it clear what parts of the witness statements are disputed or denied, and upon which those parts are disputed or denied, so that there is an obligation not merely to dispute, but to give a written statement explaining how you dispute the statements and the grounds upon which you dispute. And Chair, I wanted to take you to
Well, I want to go back to 33.61. I don't read that necessarily to go as far as saying you are not going to be allowed to cross-examine, or you are not going to be granted permission to cross-examine unless you first undertake that you will take the witness stand. It may be that it means that, but I want you to think about this. I understand that to mean if an implicated person wishes to give evidence, himself or herself, he or she must, within 2 weeks or from the date of notice, apply to the Commission for leave to give evidence, himself or herself. That's one scenario. Yeah. If he or she wants to call any witness to give evidence on his or her behalf, he must, within 2 weeks from the date of notice, apply in writing to come to the Commission for leave to do so. Yes. If he or she wishes to cross-examine a witness, he or she must, within 2 weeks from the date of notice, apply in writing to the Commission for leave to do so. I don't necessarily say let's have a debate about it. I'm simply saying That's the interpretation that comes to my mind when I read this. It may be that it's something that we can deal with tomorrow, if we are going to deal with the applications tomorrow, so that everybody can reflect on it.
Yes.
There can be no doubt about the desirability that if people are going to cross-examine, they should really be prepared to take the witness stand and give evidence.
Yes.
But whether or not this goes as far as to compel that they must make that choice up front, I'm not sure. It might be something that needs argument. But certainly, if somebody is going to apply for leave to cross-examine a witness, they've got to put up their version. And it's not going to be good enough to just give us a bad denial, unless it's one of those situations where a bad denial is all you can say, like an alibi, you know. But we must know what their version is, and so on. So I'm quite happy to say, if these applications are ready to be dealt with tomorrow, I can deal with them tomorrow. But I may have seen one that might not be a substantive application, that might be in the way of a letter.
Yes.
I think the rules require a substantive application.
Indeed.
So it would be necessary for that one to take the form of a substantive application before it can be dealt with. But those that are substantive applications, I'm quite happy to deal with tomorrow, if from the Commission's legal team, there is nothing you want to file.
Yes. Chair, we will definitely deal with these applications tomorrow. And on the issue that you want us to think about, and as we think through this and sleep over the issues you have raised, for your benefit and those of our learned friends who would be making or supporting the applications before you, please consider overnight paragraph 3.6 of the rules. It says, in deciding an application contemplated in 336, the chairperson may, in his discretion and on such terms and conditions as he may deem appropriate, grant leave to implicated persons, A, to give evidence, B, call witnesses to give evidence on their behalf, and or C, cross-examine. So what we would persuade you to do ultimately when these applications are made is to impose conditions upon which you would grant the privilege of cross-examination, because it is senseless and not in the public interest simply to grant the right to cross-examine without the accompanying obligation to put your version so that it can be tested.
Yeah, no, that's in order. Now, may I confirm that it's 3 applications, well, basically it's 2 substantive applications that I have here, is it not?
3. You have 3.
Substantive ones.
Indeed.
Or
And
the one that is not substantive is the 4th.
it's the 4th, Chair. So again, if you go to the index.
Let me just make sure that the first one is that of Ms. Kaunda,
It's a substantive application.
and then there is one for Mr. Mtolo,
Substantive application.
and then there is one for Shongwane,
It's not a substantive application.
and then it's Nonopi.
It is a substantive application.
Yes. Okay, so I'll deal with those that are substantive applications. And then with regard to Mr. Shongwana's one, his lawyers will have to put in a substantive application.
Indeed. And Chair, as you navigate through them, you'll see that they're not consistent, they're different. If you
Yes.
go to Nonopi, for instance,
Yeah,
the application does not require cross-examination.
yes,
Those who represent him will tell us that they simply want to present the evidence of Mr. Mnonopi before you without the need to
For cross-examination.
cross-examine Mr. Mcebisi.
Yeah,
Mcebisi, sorry.
okay.
Mr. Jonas.
Mr. Jonas.
Mr. Jonas, my apologies.
Yes.
And again, they're not consistent, so
Yeah.
we would like to deal with them, Chair, so that there is no doubt about where each of them stand, and there is no doubt about what form of privilege and extent of participation you afford them.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's fine. Counsel or lawyers who may be representing the applicants in these matters, is there anything you want to say about these matters being heard tomorrow, these applications? Or you are happy that we deal with them like that? There is one who indicates yes. Is there another one? Stand up, let me see. Are you involved? Are you involved in these
Not in
applications?
those particular ones.
No, I'm talking about these ones. Is there?
Thank you,
Okay, maybe I should say, who appears for Ms. Kaunda? You do. You are happy that we deal with it tomorrow? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone who appears for Mr. Mtolo? You will appear for both of them. You are happy that we deal with them tomorrow? Okay, all right. Okay. No, and there is nobody for Mr. Hlongwana? There is nobody for Mr. Hlongwana.
My recollection is that Mr. Silie appears for Mr. Hlongwane.
Oh, okay, he is
And
part of that other.
He is part of that other group.
Yeah.
But, Chair, again, without detaining you on this issue,
Yeah,
it is vital that at some point we have to reflect on Mr. Silie type of representation, because these things are hanging. And the longer they're hanging, there is bound to be
well,
some
you
confusion.
asked me to consider making some directions in regard to
Yes.
those applications.
Yes.
As things stand, have you, as the Commission's legal team, received statements from the implicated persons that that group of lawyers represent?
Not at all, Chair.
Yes.
But we assume that they may rely on some of the statements you have made when you approved the arrangement we had with them and now reflected on record. And the assumption may well be that they would arrive in the third week of September and assert a right to cross-examine without a prior application, because they told us that they'll be ready to cross-examine by that week of September. We're not saying that you should deal with that issue, but
Yeah,
all,
I understand.
all we're saying is that there is a need for you to direct them, and we can convey your directions to them that they must make the application by a certain date, because the period of 14 days contemplated in the rules has come and gone.
Yeah. I don't remember that the arrangement that was made between yourselves and them was spelled out in any detail. But I was under the impression that yourselves and them as a group had reached an agreement in terms of which everything that is supposed to be done in terms of the rules would be done by those who are supposed to do them by certain agreed dates. But from what you are saying, that might not have, the arrangement might not have had that detail.
The arrangement, insofar as it had some detail, was about the documentation which we undertook to furnish to them, and we did. But there is no clarity, and we seek your guidance on that issue, about whether they were obliged to make an application within the period of 14 days in terms of the rules, because they may read some of the statements we made or you did as an accommodation that that 14 days period is no longer applicable.
Oh, okay. I certainly didn't intend that any any step that's required in terms of the rules should be skipped without any condonation application. So that if there has been non-compliance, I expect that there should be a condonation application. I wonder whether there is any room that you might speak to them this afternoon, seeing that we are going to finish a little earlier. Well, actually, it's no longer as early as it was going to be. So with a view to a concrete arrangement that can be presented to me tomorrow morning, on the understanding that if there is no concrete arrangement that's agreed as to what will be done when, I might then just issue directions.
Yes.
But if at all possible, it would be good if there is discussion and there is agreement as to what will happen when. But failing that, I might just have to issue directions then.
Yes. Chair, we will then do that. I think it's sensible. We will contact our colleagues via the Secretariat to find out when they're ready to make those applications. If we don't reach an agreement around the period, we will certainly come back to you to issue directions.
Okay, no, thank you very much. Then we are ready to adjourn. There's nothing left that you wanted to say? Or there is still something?
Not at this stage, but certainly when the applications are motivated.
Of course, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, all right. We will adjourn until tomorrow. Should we start a little earlier if we are going to deal with the applications tomorrow first?
Chair, we will be available whenever it's convenient to you. And do I take it that we complete the evidence of Ms. Mentor to the extent possible, or we still interrupt that evidence to finalize the application before she resumes?
I think tomorrow the applications shouldn't take long, except if there is legal argument on that issue. Maybe we should try and deal with the applications so that we can have certainty in that regard. And then soon after that, then continue with Ms. Mentor's evidence.
So is it convenient if we start at 9, Chair? Or 9:30?
Maybe let's start at, I can start at 9 o'clock, we can start at 9:30. Maybe shall we make it, 9 o'clock, so that we give the applications about an hour?
The right-wingers from my side, they say they come from the rural part of Gauteng. They won't be here by 9, but certainly by 9:30.
Okay, let's say 9:30. Let's say 9:30. Okay, we therefore adjourn until 9:30 tomorrow morning.